Today's program is going to be one that I hope is going to be enjoyed by everybody. The problem with today's program is it's going to touch some of the reality that is not necessarily positive. I'm going to show you many of the new and rare plants of Mexico, as the title will show you as we go through this. The new, rare, seldom seen other cacti and succulents of Mexico. Here's the issue. I've got very many friends in the room, some of who are still currently doing work in Mexico. I was just there a month and a half ago doing some work. And all of them are seeing what I'm seeing. So I'm going to talk as much about these new and rare plants, but about the conservation and protection of these species. We all, every one of us in this room, have a major chore, an obligation to the plants we love, to do everything we can to stop what's happening, because many of these plants are either extinct or going extinct as we talk. And it's amazing the changes. Over 48 years I've been traveling Mexico. I can't even tell you how unbelievable the changes in some of these habitats have been, and especially in the last 10 years. So where I'm going to go with this is real simple. I don't normally like to give I was a teacher, I don't like to give big sheets of text and information because people don't want to read it, they just want nice pictures and good stories. But this is what's new, and I added this part, what's gone. And trust me, there's a lot that's gone, not just in Mexico. But Coatepec, Mexico, and this looks like Woody, doesn't it? It's got, the perfect belly and everything. So you're going to hear my song and dance today. And I really, I mean this with all my heart. I encourage all of us to take part in doing what we can to spread the word, to start really trying to protect these plants that are so special to all of us, because much of it is not happening. An example. If you were sitting with your grandchild on your lap, granddaughter, grandson, and you were chatting to them and saying, I remember when I was young, the little Johnny, little Jane, there used to be this creature, had a long nose, and you aren't going to get to see it because it's gone. It was called an elephant. And that's how serious things really are going. We've lost rhinoceros, Chuck Hansen, but we're dealing with the plant part of it. And some of these plants that we're talking about, they are going, and your children won't be able to see them. So my background here is what my dad told me that his dad told him. My dad's dad was in the last American Cavalry in Fort Yellowstone. And he told my dad, and my dad said the same thing to me, Woody, there are many things that I've seen that you will never see. That breaks my heart. The elephant is a good example. So here we go. Do you know or remember any of these names? I won't read them all, but I'm going to cover all of these things. But these are plants to many of us that have been the foundation of our collections, the foundations of things we really love. I can't even tell you, Aztecium, we all know the plant, Pellicophora encephalocarpus, you can call it the same genus. I'm not going to get into the fights about taxonomy. That's, as you'll see later, that's another game. Echeverias, Ariocarpus, Agaves, and this is only just some examples of the things we've dealt with. But some very new and rare plants, the Gymnos turbinis, Grusini, the golden beryl. You heard about that yesterday. Well, Mexico, I'm not going to do too much on maps, and I'm not going to zoom in and show you because it's just another map. But this is where most of our plants occur, in Baja California or Baja California, Mexico. But I will tell you what's interesting about this map, and I just came to the realization a couple of 3 years ago, basically. You see this little state here called Coahuila? I've traveled to Mexico for 48 years, and I realized only a few years ago, all of us traveled to Mexico down the Sierra Madre Oriental or the Sierra Madre Occidental, and we just skipped Coahuila. Some of the most remote and unexplored areas in all of Mexico are right next to Texas. And now what we're finding is in the areas of Zacatecas, in these areas, tons of more new, unexplored, exciting areas, new species for all of us to see. This is what's happening. I'll read it because I want to add some comments and it'll make it easy. Mexico has increased its intent to protect special species of cacti and succulents endemic to their country. I'm giving Mexico a ton of credit because they really are trying to protect their plants. Or let's change that. Some of them are. And they're coming from universities and colleges and people who are loving these plants and animals and things. Local ejidos, a ejido is like a little community that's been given empowerment over its area in Mexico. Or communities are asked to monitor these habitats. Now you're going, well, what do you mean asked to monitor? There's no money in Mexico, like pretty much here in our country, where they're spending time to watch over these plants. So what they're doing is asking the ejidos. Jeff knows what I'm talking about. He's just got back from seeing these things. And so the ejidos are saying, yeah, we'll protect it. They're providing them with barbed wire and with fences. And so what's happening is that tourism pays the locals so visitors can view and or photograph special species at the community's benefit. You go in and they say you can't go in there. Well, I've been going here for 40 years, but no, you can't go now. But we will let you go in if you pay us $20, 2,000 pesos. We'll let you 300 pesos. We'll let you photograph and view. Well, I think that's okay. That's tourism. We do the same with our national parks. That's fine. That puts money into the people's pockets. Local government has, in some cases, developed local government, ejidos, communities, self-interests. They want to make money. They're not, for the most part, wealthy people. They're relatively poor. So the locals are enticed to sell these special plants at rates that are much greater than the fee that they charge us for a photograph. Well, wait a minute, they're there to protect them. They're there to protect them is what I was told. So the people of many of these communities are economically deprived, and the added monies from selling plants, well, if I'm raising children and I have very little money, and most of these areas are in poor areas, a little extra bucks by a couple Aztec Emeritae that I sell, or 100 that I sell, or 5,000 that I sell. And on the bottom, in some cases, the locals don't care where these plants go. They really don't, because these plants to them are much like tumbleweeds are to us. This is really true. They're just a spiny. You know, I was talking at lunch today, and I'll make this analogy. You and I, all of us in this room, we look at these cacti and succulents as being very, very special and wonderful, wonderful plants. But do you realize that 80% of all of the people in this country and most other countries don't give a damn about them? Cacti are spiny, dangerous, horrible things. They're weeds. Okay, also there are other aspects to the removal of the plants. Locals, like many of us, you know, they find these plants beautiful for their gardens. Well, I can't blame them. We do too. Many of the cacti and succulents from the habitat can be sold to their neighbors. If you drive along in Mexico, you'll see little booths next to the highways. And they'll have rattlesnakes hanging on them. They'll have chipmunks on little leashes. They'll have birds of prey. They'll have cacti and succulents in boxes. Okay, these uses include, that these people want to use these plants for, they include Christmas ornaments, well documented in an article in Maddalena 2 years ago. Religious ceremonies, they use them for wedding decorations, community landscaping, medicinal use. And all of us we're guilty here. Alcohol, which we like, and for food, and many, many other needs. This is what's happening. Agricultural encroachment, sorry about it, from cattle, goats, sheep, horses, burros, as well as the general clearing of the landscape for growing their crops to feed their people. We all are doing this all over the world. Last, urban encroachment from roads and structures. All of us in this room, I think, have an obligation to look at life that we are living with all things. We are living with the environments around us. We aren't supposed to dominate them and eliminate them so we can live. We should learn to live with them. I call it the energy exchange. Yes, it's normal to eat plants, and yes, it's normal for us to eat fish and beef and whatever. That's part of the energy exchange. That's how it works. But we need to learn to live with them, not eradicate them in the process. So the last thing is, what can we do to protect and preserve these rare plants? Support and encourage our nurseries to produce these plants. And the reason I'm hitting that nursery right on top, I talk to people like Kelly Griffin and many people, Greg Starr, you name them, and they produce these plants amazing. But guess what? They have to go through amazing amounts of paperwork and bureaucratic BS so that they can maybe ship them someplace else in the world. And all of Kelly Griffin's, for example, hybrids are illegal. Aloe hybrids are illegal to ship out of the country. They're hybrids. They don't even occur in the field. And because they're hybrids, that means they're artificially propagated 99% of the time. But you know the hassles that go on? Petra Chris can tell you the same kind of stories, trying to get these things in and out. So we need to work with our nurseries to produce these and enable the nurseries to sell all artificially produced plants across international boundaries. And this is where our problems are occurring a little bit right now, our international boundaries, more than we know, or international borders. Without a costly and convoluted paperwork, we need to hire qualified people to be able to inspect and understand what plants are truly collected and which ones aren't. How many of you in the room have been asked to be an inspector? One hand. That's impressive, because I didn't expect even one. There are people in this room who know a field collected plant from a nursery produced one. Not always can we be 100%. If you go to a court of law, we'll probably lose. But the point is, the people who inspect these, if you've ever gone through inspection, often they don't know a cactus from an orchid. Therefore, how qualified are they to make a decision that you're bringing something legal or illegal or artificially propagated or not? Okay, we need to stop the sale of illegal field collected plants, especially across international borders, and encourage real rescue projects. Okay, I give Arizona a huge pat on the back. Your club, by your club I mean the Central Arizona and the Tucson Club, you guys are marvelous in what you're doing with your rescue programs. Because there are roads, there are pipelines, there are all sorts of things that go in, and these plants and animals are destroyed in the process. Well, what's wrong with removing them and saving them rather than plowing them up? Nothing. That's the best we can do with urban encroachment as it goes. But what is happening, I won't mention the states. Arizona is great. You get a little tag that goes on each plant, and you have to pay a little fee for it. That way they're recognized. There are other states where they're primarily owned by individuals, the whole state. And the individuals can do what they want on their property. And there aren't any state-mandated rescue programs. So what you have to do is a farmer has to say, or a rancher has to say, I'm going to put in a road, I'm going to put in a gas or tank, whatever it is, and I would like to see you rescue these plants. That's a good thing. But in those cases, there's no real formal paperwork. It's just up to the rancher writing out a sheet of paper. I know I've got these, saying that these plants were rescued because we were doing this project. That's good, but it's suspect because guess what? In some cases, they were rescued where there was never a road put in, never a barn built. They were just said they did that. So we have to be careful. We need to monitor the, let's see, this is not, there we go. Monitor, and you notice I changed the color, the electronic trade in obviously field collected plants. I challenge all of you, please, to go Google search Copiapoas, Ariocarpus, Azteciums, and you are going to be shocked what's out there on the market. I am speaking factual, and when you look at these things, you're going to realize I am being as accurate as possible. I'm going to show you plants in this picture, in this program, that are selling for $900, $1,000 a plant, and the plant's not any bigger than a tennis ball. And they're field collected. And they shouldn't be exiting a country that doesn't allow it. But it's all happening. Encourage all CITES signing countries to enforce their laws. Well, I'm sure most of you are familiar with the United Euro area. All the countries that came together. I think Britain just moved out of that. Well, because of that, the international border between, let's say, Czechoslovakia and Germany or France or whatever country, they can move across borders now without any restrictions. So plants that come into Europe need to be inspected by the CITES signing countries, but some of them are very lax in what they're doing. And as a result, plants are coming in by, I'm not exaggerating, thousands, and nobody ever inspected and stopped them. But now they can grow across all the boundaries because they're in the international, the European Union. This is scary because what's happening is it's diminished our abilities for CITES to do its job. So, the last and bottom line on here, enforcing these international CITES within the countries, we, please, I beg you, we all need to open our mouth and say some things and let it be known to the people who can move forward. CSSA is doing the very best they can, I know, to encourage conservation of our species. Our problem is that we've actually created some problems, which I'll show later. Unintentionally, but we did. For each of us to individually respect the laws and only buy nursery-produced plants. And I probably should have put rescued plants because there's value there. I can't deny that. It's better than plowing them up. That's my whole bit. There'll be no more major bunch of words, and I've said a lot, but here's where we're going to go. Are those hectares stunning or what? They're stunning, and this is all part of one little population I was just at in Tehuacan. And when I saw these, I'm photographing all the color forms. I go, God, I'd like to have this form. I'd like to have a vegetative. And you know, they pup, so a vegetative pup would be fine. Then we can meristem it and so on, tissue culture it. But I can't legally take them out unless I go get paperwork. And I'm not willing to go do it. And you know how plants sometimes get stuck in our shoelaces? A dirty sock. You know, the best place is the dirty underwear because the inspectors don't want to look there. But they know better. So what's really happening here is plants like this need to be in the trade. That clone is unbelievable to me. I think it should be something that we're propagating. I would love to have brought back, there are many pups, I'd love to have brought back one. Don't do it, won't do it, because I'll be a criminal then. And believe it or not, the guy who wants to bring it back so that the nursery trade can make it, as Peter Breslin, or no, who said it about the money? We want to produce, I think Graham Charles said it, we want to produce more plants than we possibly need to so that we can take the pressure off the field populations. And I'm totally for that. But sometimes the guy who finds it isn't recognized as a university person or somebody, so they ignore that person. Well, this just gives you an idea. This is where the plant occurs. There are rows and rows and rows that they just stripped out so they can plant some corn. So the plant is being destroyed. And what's growing in the same areas are amazing plants, Neobuxbamia tetitsu, and of course an affinity mammillaria, wawapensis. Same area. Beautiful Bucarnia strictas, and I like the tagging on the trunk of this one, 1939. That was when I was first there. Well, if you go into Oaxaca, one of my favorite areas, stomping grounds, there are beautiful areas, and this is one, an old bridge that's across here, an aqueduct bridge actually, and it's on the road to Fulcaria purpusi, a plant that's been a big part of me and in propagation and getting this plant into the trade, mainly through a friend named Joe Stead. But this is on the way to the type locality, a border marking between the two states, and the place is called Petlanco. The plants are being wiped out. Here's purpusi in habitat. It's a killer. It's a stunning, beautiful, beautiful plant. Overlooking the valley called Tomayin, which is one of my significant stomping grounds. But you can see these are stunning, stunning plants. By the way, somebody said they're red-flowered. There's supposedly red-flowered ones out there. Well, I hope they were really looking, because that's the fruit. And you know, we saw the red fruit on the saguaros earlier. This is what this mountaintop is being done with. It is being stripped. And same thing, this is not actually Petlanco, but another one. They're all being stripped and mined. And on that same area, just for the Mam people, Mammillaria schmollii grows there. Same thing, right at the base of it, being buried by tailings, Fulcaria luimelli. How many of you have seen that plant, or how often do we see that one in the trade? The other Fulcarias that are special, and this is one of my favorite of all the Fulcarias, Fulcaria shrevi. I love this plant. I know when I first saw it, some of you have heard the story. I'm driving by, this is 40 years ago, and I thought somebody teepeed that plant. Can you believe they did that? I thought it was toilet paper. Well, look at where they flower. Very different than all other Fulcarias. All of the rest produce apical inflorescence. In this case, one at every leaf axil. This plant, though, grows in almost pure gypsum and has the most amazing trunk. You won't be able to grow it like that, and if you get a plant like that, I'll guarantee you somebody collected it. They came in years ago. The problem is these areas today, the gypsum mining is taking care of the area near Cuatro Ciénegas. Jeff, did you guys take them there on your trip? So you know what I'm saying is dead on. Fulcaria shrevi, one of my favorites. It's so rare. We grew them from seed, though. They take a while, but they grow from seed. We're changed and go to the genus Mammillaria. How many of you have seen Mammillaria Bertholdi before? It's pretty rare, isn't it? Only about 5 hands in the room. This is an amazing plant that when I saw the first pictures of it, I went, oh my gosh, I've got to go. I'm a mam guy. It's my first love. Mammillaria plants, by the way. Well, actually, I like both. I have to be honest. That's for Rob. I know Rob's out there. He'll understand. Bertholdi is an amazing plant. This is the locality. We went down there, got in there. I had type locality information from my friends in Europe, from the MAM Society, German and English. Got the type locality, got there, drove down the roads. No fences, no gates, no signs. We're at type. Went out to see the plants. It wasn't more than an hour there and we're arrested. Why were we arrested? Well, they said we weren't allowed to be there. This is private property. Well, in America, private property is usually posted and there will be gates or fences or something. There's nothing. It's just open. The road that goes to the next town, actually. A community road, I assume. Well, you go up the hill and here are these plants. These mammillary Bertholdi's, that's a thumb or fingernail. You can see how big they are. They are unbelievable. Well, we're arrested because we're not allowed to photograph them. And so we spend quite a bit of time talking with them, and we're being charged 500 pesos each, which is no big deal, as a fine for being there photographing these plants. And we asked, well, why are you doing this? They said, well, others have come in and collected them. Something doesn't jive with me. We said, well, we're photographing. This is all our private land now. You have to pay a fine. We said, we didn't collect. We don't collect. Well, there have been too many collectors, and this is where it gets interesting. Because when you put words together, you usually come up with interesting messages. One of the gentlemen says, we've talked to the mayor of our community, and he doesn't want people in here getting these plants. And the reason he doesn't want it, because this plant shouldn't have been named after this Berthold. It should have been named after us. Well, how many locals in the backcountry little communities know how plants are named? So somebody has talked to somebody and spread some information trying to set up a tone. Well, this is what's happening in Europe. I give great credit. That's a tubercle. There's one little spine cluster, a tubercle graft. This picture's from Paul Clausen, both of these. But this is great. This is going to increase the production, getting those plants out there. This is what the plant looks like. This is in my collection. No, actually, Jurgen's collection, this one. But you can see they have marvelous flowers related to Mammillaria hernandezi. Now, this is another story. Does it look like any erosion is taking place here? Amazing amounts of erosion because of cattle and goats and livestock. Hernandezi only grows where there's some soil left. Hernandezi looks like this. It's about the size of a 25-cent piece. It's a marvelous little plant, but almost wiped out, not because of collectors, but because of urban encroachment. This is just to show you, in the area where the Bertholdi grows, this is Ortego McDougallii and a new Echeverria species. I'm sure it needs to be described. A bizarre little thing. It's got Purpusorum and other stuff in it. Well, here's another mammillaria with a fabulous story. Mammillaria luthi. We all know the story. It was found growing in a can in southern Coahuila, and nobody could ever find it. Charlie Glass, me, Rippenhagen, Lau, we all looked for it, never found it. Well, eventually Luthi did his field work, found the plant. I give him unbelievable credit for doing that. This plant is only the size, again, of your thumbnail. And it has the most incredible, let's see, there we go, incredible spines. As you can see, they're like little umbrellas with little tiny micro umbrellas. It's just amazing what a beautiful plant it is. In habitat, they're there. We went there to photograph them. We got stopped. The guy said, this is my private land. You can't photograph here unless you pay me some money. So we paid him some money. We don't care. We'll chip into that. We went and photographed. He took us and where he dug up plants and planted them in the ground. We said, this is not where the plant grows. These have been planted. We want to see the actual plant if we're going to pay you money. So we went to the habitat, and that's what you're seeing. When we're done, he said to us, and I'm telling you the absolute truth, this is one of many cases, he said to us, how many plants would you like to buy? I went on a tirade, but it was tried to be as polite as possible. I said, no, you're here to protect these plants. We don't want these plants. We want you to keep them here and maintain them. Don't allow people to take these plants. And he, agreed, but I don't know about the next guy there. That's how they grow in habitat. In the back of the room, you can come in and see anything. But if you start really looking, you'll start finding these plants, and they're in there, and they're tiny. As I said, the size of your thumbnail. That's what they look like in flower. When we're on the trips photographing, this is two of my buddies that travel with me from time to time. Kelly Griffin, Jürgen Menzel likes to travel. I can't get him to go as much as we used to, but he's great. Just to give you an idea, where they fenced off an area north of Cuatro Ciénegas, no more livestock. Unbelievable. There's no livestock. You should see the plants in densities like you don't see anywhere else, because they protected it. This is a good thing. Epithelantha micromeris, of course. Near Vizaron, or Vista Hermosa, southern Hidalgo, Querétaro, those areas, Mammillaria herreri. I used to see these plants in great numbers, and then they were disappearing. Well, they were building a dam called the Presa Zimapan, and the whole community of mine workers were living in little homes. And at Christmas time, this is documented, you can go read this in one of the Mexican books, locals would go out and collect these because they make perfect little Christmas balls for their Christmas tree. So the plant's been wiped out. There's 5 locations. It's been heavily, heavily reduced in most of them. Not collectors, but just, intent. Near San Luis de la Paz, a plant that I had the pleasure of rediscovering. It for years they thought it was the same as Herreri. It's not. It's very different. But some of you know me because I love to collect ant dressing, I call it, for my top dressing in my pots. Well, here in the ant mountains, as well as in the grass, this wonderful little Mammillaria albiflora, and today it's accepted as a unique species, and I think it should be personally. If you know the Longiflora series, and this is a big mess, I proposed it with the Huntington Symposium, 30 years ago, that this be changed to the trickle seeders, because their method of seed dispersal is by trickle seeding. And that was accepted. The Germans moved forward with that, and I think there is such a series now. But this is Mammillaria saboi, named after Kitty Sabo, she used to travel with us years ago, and vice versa. And then Mammillaria goldie and Mammillaria teresi. Well, I made a trip 2 years ago, and we're in there coming up on top of mountains where there's a new road. And you know what new roads mean. Areas we just didn't have the energy to hike to before. So we get up on top, and I see this flower. I didn't know this was going to be there. And I'm going, oh my gosh, this looks like a saboi complex flower. And it is. I looked very carefully. There's another one there, and there's another one there. So when I got real close to the plant, it's saboi, there's no question about it. And I got very close to look. I said, I've got a brand new species. Got home, I was going to write it up, but my friends from England and my other buddies said, we have to be careful, we can't give this locality away. It'll be destroyed, because there's another beautiful echinoceras there called Romerianus. So we have to find a way to get around it. Well, I got home, we looked it up. It was described 6 months earlier. So we weren't the first to see it, but here's what it looks like. It looks a lot like a goldie, but the spines are longer and a lot of characteristics I won't go into, but here they are, clustering. Fantastic new little species. We don't want the collectors to know where this is at. North of San Roberto Junction, you get into the limestone outcrops of the Agave lechuguilla and out in the salt flats, and you find this one. This one has almost been wiped out. It only grows on one basic hill, Mammillaria Sanchez mejorada. Wiped out by collectors. Then you go down to southern Mexico, back into Tomillin, and this is a special story. This I dedicate to Graham Charles, my buddy, because Graham and I have some differences of opinion on taxonomy, which is okay, it's healthy, I think. And I found this plant many, many years ago, 30 years ago, and they grow on the cliffs, and they're tiny little things. And they only get to be the size of a golf ball. That's a giant plant. And of course, that's what one of them looks like. Now you look at that and you go, well, that looks kind of like Mammillaria huitzilopochtli, and it does. Although huitzilopochtli from type locality, and I went where Lau found the plants, they usually get 4 to 6 inches tall. They're solitary with big, long, black centrals occasionally. This never has centrals and never gets bigger than a golf ball. Okay, well that's not significant, just big and small. Well, it was named provisionally by some of my Germans in the MAM Society as Minnich, which I was quite honored, but it was a naked name, not properly published. Well, I'm going to show you a picture here. These two are Huitzilopochtli, classic Huitzilopochtli. And you see that central I talked about. And if you look at the radial spines here, you'll see something. Now look at these two. Well, they're closely related, but you can see how much denser these are. When you look really careful at the one that was named for me, take a look. If you can, you have to be closer, you aren't going to see it. But there are white radials sticking out here, and on top, and a complete series of black, we'll call them subcentrals or major radials. There are two sets of spines sitting on top of each other, nothing like Huitzilopochtli. And I'll go into other aspects. The spiral count's different. Flower, all of the MAMs will tell me the same flower. But I don't know if you can see it. Can you see the white radials and then you see the black ones on top in a plane, a different plane? Steve Brack has the plant. You have a few of the 454s, right? Or used to have. Steve used to have them. There's only a few of us. You know who's the only guy that can produce seed on this? Gerhard Marx. Because it's pollinated by some insect, and it's only receptive at about 12 to 2 in the morning. And most of us are too lazy, or by the time we've had that many drinks, we can't find the parts anyway. But this is an exciting one. But this is one of my statements I made earlier, and I'm going way too slow. Taxonomy is like religion and politics. It's each person's opinion. This is what happens when you get into taxonomy. This is our great friend Attila on his first trip, and he asked me to show him tarantulas, and I'm going, okay, yeah, it's all based on barometric pressure. I take him to the first site, we get out of the car, and there's tarantulas everywhere. And he says, Woody, you're really good. I didn't tell him until he came back a few years later. That was all luck. Rio Pelon used to be the main road, went right up the river. It's been wiped out. This is a plant that myself and Myron Kimnack found almost simultaneously. I provided the pictures for Myron. They were along the Rayones Valley, Rio Pelon, and it's called Echeverria lilacina. And it's found in the lateral canyons, and it's still, luckily enough, along the main river, but you can't get down there without long hikes now. But lilacina is amazing. Echeverria agavoides, another one of those plants that was heavily collected because of its ornamental qualities. And we had some groups from another part of the world who were trying to get all these Echeverias they possibly could. A beautiful little sedum. But here's one of the Echeverria forms, and the Echeverria agavoides forms. They're spectacular. They're all different, and they got many new names for them. Lipstick is an old name. Ebony, this name, Nipples, went to this plant. I don't know who named that, but it sounded like one of Kelly's names. And Pinky, well, we've all seen the Pinky one. Pachyphytum kimnacki grows in the same spot with the same plants. Ornamental, international demand. This is a site that I want to thank Jeff for. He gave me an exact, well, I had the locality, but we also went to see a special cycad for him. And this site, you walk up the hill. I won't tell you, there's some landmarks there, but I won't tell you what they are. You get up there close, and when you're looking around, then you find Maddalena Stacks, and over here. What's that?
You got it blooming.
Oh yeah, we were lucky. Echeverria purpusorum, one of the jewels of the Echeverria group. Look at this plant. They are stunning. We found lots of them. They're there, thank gosh, and they're protecting them there. That community is protecting them. They didn't offer us any for sale. Okay, what's the cycad that's just down the road, Jeff? I didn't put the name because I couldn't remember.
Dion Capitoi.
Capitoi. Dion Capitoi. Thank you. You go along the Rio Quiotepec, at the confluence of the Rio Quiotepec and Salado. I used to go across the railroad bridge to get there. Now you have to take other routes. Oh my gosh. The plants got collected by the locals again and by people from other countries. This is an amazing plant that Alfred Lau found. They are stunning. Well, you gotta have curtains, you know, you gotta make, I like that display thing. I've never used it before. I used it a few times here. But Echeverria Laui. I brought in a few seedlings here on the table and I was shocked. Nobody got them. I went over there and looked, 2 of them are gone already. They'll be gone by the time this program's over. This plant is tough to come by. We've grown them from seed, so they're rare, but they're available. Zacatecas, Chapultepec, in the mountains, another one. Charlie and I worked on this for years thinking that it was subrigida. It wasn't. It's Echeverria Conte, spectacular plant. Then you go over to Monterey, you get into the grass areas where a plant has been forever. And people, all of us, Ed Gay and all the collectors I can think of, we walked over these plants over and over and over. And this is the famous Digitostigma, Caput Medusa, or today, and I agree with this, flower, fruit, and seed, it's dead on, Astrophytum, you can see it's perfect, Astrophytum Caput Medusa. First times there I spent with this man who discovered it, Manuel Navarrez, and he was growing seed. They're easy. Unless you leave your nursery and your seedlings are there, and they look like little dead sticks, and your friends are so well intended to help clean up the dead things in your nursery, and you return and go, where are my dead sticks? Happens. That's what it looks like. Marvelous plant. I can't help but show this because this is an example of a plant. It's not terribly endangered, and actually things have improved because of road things. But once again, this is where wrinkles become really beautiful. Astrophytum myriostigmas and Myriostigma nuda, we actually found the true location for this. And you can go into all the forms of these astrophytums. They're pretty spectacular. Strongylogonum, quadrocostatum, and so on and so on. I love the plants. Look at this one. This is of the nude population, but look at all the ribs. Just amazing. 9 rib. Sometimes there's competition. I got to get the first picture. But what we've learned is to work as a team. And the tall guy has to be in the back. And this is a plant that we're having trouble with protecting here in the United States. There's some good populations in Mexico. At least there were last time I was there. Astrophytum mysterious, of course. And they're stunning plants, to say the least. Pellicophora siliformis. I took my friends into the type locality on this last trip 2 months ago. It's wiped out. I was just there where I used to find thousands of plants, and there's a mine, and the miners kicked us out. So you figure it out. I know 2 other locations, but there are not many plants at those, and there wasn't many plants in comparison. Unbelievable species. Pellicophora, or Encephalocarpus if you wish, Strobiliformis, another plant. We used to know 5 major locations. Only 1 location is left that I'm aware of. There's always something new to be found. But here's what they look like. Amazing plants. Pretty much really, really endangered. And from collectors, I hate to say it. Obregonia denegrii. Used to be 3 major locations in Wamabi. There's only 1. Only 1 left. And look at how they used to be. You couldn't walk. I mean, literally, you couldn't walk without stepping on them. And clusters. They don't cluster freely. And big fat guys. If you go further south into Querétaro and Hidalgo and those areas, Tehuacan, Strombocactus disciformis, not endangered. That's what they look like. They grow on the cliffs. But there are some new plants found. Strombocactus jarmelli. Questionable. You all have our arguments. The seed differentiation, this and that. As to the taxonomy, you can take what you want. It's been collected because it was near the road. Strombocactus esperanzi, near a place called Sichu. I went in there to photograph it. I always stopped just short. I could have been the discoverer, but I always stopped short. So I got in there, went to photograph it with my buddies. We started walking in. We got stopped by a local. Oh, you can't go in there. You have to pay to photograph them. You're hearing the same story over and over. We said, okay, that's fine. We paid, went in. The plants weren't numerous like the other strombos normally are. We got back to his home, and he said, by the way, would you like to buy some plants? We said, no, we're here to photograph. He said, well, let me show you. We went into his room, which was about his house, which was about 15 by 15 square. There was a pile this high and 6 feet wide of all these plants. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. And I said, what are these for? Oh, these are for Senor, and I'm not going to say his name, from Europe. Along with it, Turbinicarpus alonzi grows there. There's a magnificent plant that we just don't have in the trade. I'm encouraging everybody to try to get this and get it going. Steve, you recognize it, Robert Cianum. A really exciting plant. It should be an easy one to propagate. I couldn't take a cutting when I saw them, but nobody has it in the trade. And it's a stunning sedum. Here's another plant. Because of America and their desire to have landscape plants, but it's not just America, it's on the other side of the ocean. They collected millions of the Dazzlerian longissimums. And this site where they collected them was also, and still is the site, not too many plants, Turbinicarpus pseudopectinatus flat in the ground. Well, here's the Dazzlerians again near Dr. Arroyo. More of them with Yucca carnerosana. And just to give you an idea, when they flower, the Dazzlerians can be beautiful flowers. Well, we saw a gorgeous picture from Peter a little bit earlier of Coryphantha escobaria robins Eorum. And this is a close relative to it, along with Escobaria minima, or nana, if you wish. And it grows in these mud flats, Laguna La Leche. Will you go there? And we really hadn't had any drinks yet. Effectively, you have to get down on your hands and knees, but I want you to notice the patterns. This is where the plant grows, and the locals have gone in there with their cattle and stuff, and they drive their trucks. Well, there's nothing there. There is nothing to worry about. You can't do any. You see all the plants in the picture? Boom. Look at the spines, Escobaria abdita. This is one of the most beautiful, corky little spines, a lot like Arpediocactus. Nirtula, Ariocarpus, Agavoides. I remember many years ago I told this to Steve, because Steve Brackett asked me where was the location, and I said it's near Tula. He went there and there were no plants. I said, you're kidding. I went back 2 years later when the rains came and all the plants were there again. It's one of those stories where they disappeared. The goats were eating them, and to give you an idea, see all the goat droppings? And there's the plants. So they eat the tops off and you think they're gone. But collectors did do their damage. Ariocarpus bravoanus. Charlie Glass did a marvelous thing. He said, we need to protect this plant. We fenced it off. We hired the locals to protect the plant. A few years later, somebody from Europe came in and said, I'll pay you so much for the plants. I went there in the fall to photograph them in flower. All the plants were gone, minus a few. The locals who were hired to protect it made more money by collecting them and selling them. And so, once again, we did the right thing, but the result turned out to be people have other interests. Vista hermosa. Amazing area, Ariocarpus cachubianus. This is really a naked name, elephantidens, but we'll call it that because everybody does. Marvelous area. Thank gosh they're still there. Even crests. Rayonis again. Anybody who's been there can't help but walk on these marvelous hills. This is my good friend Vince Basta, and he's up there looking at these. You can't hardly tell they're there because they blend in so well. Ariocarpus scaphrostris. Heavily collected for years, but there are still plants there, and I don't think they're being collected now. Northwest of Cuatro Ciénegas, a brand new gymnocactus. This is brand new, has not been described unless somebody has done something in the last few months. But this is a stunning plant with amazingly beautiful pectinate spines, generally an upturned central. Saw it and I thought, well, maybe it's Beguini. It's not. Maybe it's Septentrionalis. It's not. It's a very, very unique plant. So somebody's going to get some plants. I'm going to notify some people from Mexico. Maybe they can deal with it. But this is a stunning new species, and I would love to have it in my collection. It's beautiful. Here's another location called Potrero Grande. You go up in the hills, and here's the new Gymnosauri Septentrionalis. Neat. You can see it's got a relationship to that one you just saw. Limestone mining right there. I showed this Epithalantha. This is a Epithalantha unguispinus, but unlike most that have a black central, this is a white central, a unique species. But guess what's happening? All the dust from the limestone mining is coating everything and killing it. Gymnocactus gonzalesi. Anybody have it in the room? Not a hand. That's how rare it is. And luckily it'll stay rare, I think, for a while. And of course right here you see some Ariocarpus trigonus, no big deal. But when you look real careful, you find Gymnocactus nibeli. Nobody in the room has that either, I'll bet. And here he is by a baby Gymno, or a baby Ariocarpus, Gymnocactus nibeli. Gymnocactus mandragora, I show it because it's the iconic plant of the genus. And luckily it's still in place to my knowledge, at least a few years ago it was. And they're stunning plants, they really are. They go way back. Those curtains are cool, aren't they? I like them. I got overdosed at the end. You'll see nothing but curtains. So the agaves, oh my gosh, Brian Kimball and Kelly and Greg Starr and these guys that love agaves, they really know their stuff. But there's exciting things. Here's an old plant that I showed Brian and Kelly many years ago, and it's then been since shared. I like to call it Ferdinandi Regis, but it's Nicholsiae today to most people. And then here's the original, we'll call it centerpiece for this whole group, Victoria Reginae, and the new one, Pintia. And you're probably thinking, well, they're very similar. They are similar, but they're different. New species, Huasteca. You go up the mountains in Huasteca, and there's many locations for Victoria Reginae. This is just one to show you what they look like. But then you go to my little site, which is between Monterey and Saltillo. I call it my site, but it's Nichols' site. And you see these plants, and they're very unique. They are stunning. They look like somebody from Asia took a paintbrush and painted the lines on them. And then at that same site, you have Nicholsiae, Lophantha, Lechugia, and there's all these hybrids. On various trips we've found all of the known plants where Pumila has never been given a type specimen and or a actual location. This is what it is, it's a hybrid. And shark skin, same thing from this locality. And there's a couple others here that are in the trade, came from this site. Here's Pintia. Unbelievable plant. On those curtains, I couldn't get, I'm sorry. There's a few other agaves, and I could go into more, but we'll let Greg and all those experts go into those for you. But this is an area where I was told you have to hike up on the cliffs, and this agave that occurs here, you won't be able to get them woody because they've all been collected out. And it's true, all the lower elevation ones have. But I'm full of energy, and I'm going to find a way. And I did. I found a way up a little canyon wall and got up to where I could walk up and just stand there and look at these plants. And this is the famous pom-pom agave, Agave albopilosa. This is one that is worth spending a lot of time growing, and it is an amazing plant. But what I was so lucky is when I got back to the car, Kelly said, well, Woody, I'm sorry you probably didn't find any because they're impossible and you're too old. He really said that. And he's right, I am getting old. I said, well, yeah, I did find them, Kelly, but the one that I like the most is the one that was in flower. And he was, what? What do you mean in flower? Those are the pom-poms. Tell me that isn't an amazing flower for an agave. I showed him the picture, and Kelly was up the mountain, and I even showed him how he got. I should have made him find his own way. Badlands of Zacatecas. Brian Kimball gave us a site for a new gymnocactus, or echinocactus, I'm sorry. This is a new species, Brian. I've compared it a lot with our old Grusini, and it is not the same. There's no question about it. But Grusini, sadly enough, as many of you know, was flooded by the Pressazima pond, and plants as big as, and I'm not exaggerating, as big as Volkswagens. That's how big the Grusini were. Unbelievable plants. That's just Grusini, and we all know what it is. I'm lucky enough, I took this picture just for fun one day when I was at the Huntington. Thank you, John Traeger, wherever you are. But the poor plants, Pressazima pond, flooded them out. My dad used to say that sometimes people talk about progress. It's a good thing. I sometimes wonder. Unbelievable. What used to be a monotype, Aztecium, is now Ritteri, Hintoni, and Valdezi. The old locality, this is where you guys probably just went, guys. That's the monument where there's so many plants on that monolith. You get there and you start to see these. There are millions. There are literally millions. And here they are, nice Ritteris growing everywhere, fat little plants. I went there to where they're all along the river. There used to be literally millions, all stripped out, all fenced off, and we were approached by a gentleman who said, you have to pay money if you'd like to go in here to photograph them. We paid some more money, went in, and the plants are basically gone. There are a couple spots where they're still there, but the numbers, and I'm not kidding, 48 years of seeing these plants, the numbers that are gone are absolutely shocking. San Jose del Rio, Aztecium hintoni. It's still pretty solid population, thank gosh, but they have been also removed. And what they did here, they learned, make money, come on in, we'll lead you in, you can photograph, you pay your money, and then when you start to drive out, there's a little booth. And how many would you like to buy? I am not Jeff, I'm telling the truth, aren't I? You've been there, you've seen it.
There was no booth, but there was some other place.
Yeah. But what used to happen when they had the booth, I have European friends who bought some plants. They drove out further and they were stopped by the federales. The plants were confiscated. They were fined. Some of them lost their cameras, had their car impounded. And guess where the plants went? Back to the booth. The Rio Potosi. This is an amazing new area. The story here is long. I won't go into it. But if you look at this, you don't see anything until you really look. There are 9 Azteciums in this picture. And this is the new Aztecium valdezi. They are stunning. And they have been also collected. There's still a reasonable number of plants. Well, reasonable for what I know, because I wasn't there before the collection's taken place. So, that's a story of some of the new and rare things. 48 years in Mexico, and my tractor is still running, guys. So please help out. Thank you.